I can host you on Twitch. Actually, that would help a little.
Broadcast is live.
No, I can't.
Hey, we are live. No, you wouldn't do that. Hello, everybody. All 13 of you watching. I am Breadbeard of Soft Boys Social Club, and this morning, depending on where you are, we have Emerican Johnson and Mexie. We are going to continue our chat last time from Mexie's channel. If you didn't see that, go watch the stream after you watch this one. Just so
please do.
Things in reverse.
If you watch that one first, then we will be done by the time you finish watching it.
Yeah, and then you can just pick right up.
Yeah.
If you can use your like Time Lord time pause thing, and then just come back here. If you can use your like. Whoa. Okay, sorry about that. I had my
Mute that audio.
Yeah. I swear to God, I remembered it, and I tried to mute it beforehand, but I can't until it goes live. There's no volume control.
Right. Yeah.
Like a errant hair. Look at that giant ass gray hair. Wow.
This is the kind of entertainment you come to see, folks.
This is the side that's this is where all my stress goes, right here.
Just into one. Well, if you were a true I don't know if they do it there. Maybe Luna can confirm, but in China and Taiwan, it's super good luck if you've got like a mole and you've got like one super long hair. You can never cut it. So like
I've seen that a few times. It's like lucky. Yeah. Well, I get a lot of comments on my beard, and they're like, and they always say like, they always ask Luna in Vietnamese like, why does your boyfriend have such a big beard? And she says he wants to have a beard like Mark's. And they laugh so hard. They're like, why would an American like Mark's? That's so funny.
Psych out, chat. This is actually a complete beard stream. We're just going to talk about beards.
Yeah.
Give Mexie some
all
tips.
Day.
Yeah.
All
Yeah.
Day,
Thanks. I need the tips. Thank you. I'd like to grow a Mark's beard.
My one tip would be, if you do have a beard, like once it gets past a certain length, you got to start putting like wax or oil or something in it, or it gets dry. Or at least mine does.
Yeah, mine gets dry. Well, we're here in Taiwan. I'm a teacher, and I have to wear a face mask because of the coronavirus right now.
Yeah,
by regulation.
High risk.
Yeah, and
the beard will not allow a seal.
This is not conducive to it.
Yeah. We're gonna all die. We're all gonna die. That's okay. Yeah. I keep saying Big Joel was. This is the last thing I'll say off topic, and then we can go back into it. But Big Joel was tweeting about Big Joel's going to Italy, I guess, and was like, "Am I going to get coronavirus?" And then I was like, "Well, if you get coronavirus, and you're the first YouTuber to get coronavirus. Think about how good that is for clickbait." You know? if Big Joel gets coronavirus, that it practically clicks itself.
Oh boy. It's dark.
Big Joel is going to single-handedly bring enough awareness, because there's no awareness. Nobody knows about coronavirus.
Nobody's talking about it.
Right, exactly.
Nobody's talking about it.
Not enough. Not enough.
I swear we'll get to the actual topic of this, but the last thing is
you're the host, Breadbeard. I'm just gonna keep vamping until you rein us in. I'm
gonna keep it going off topic. My family is constantly worried about me with coronavirus here in Taiwan, and I'm worried about you guys. I've got healthcare here. We've got national healthcare, and we've actually already. I think it's tomorrow that it's going to go live. They've gotten a 15-minute coronavirus test. Like, they're really on top of it here, actually.
Mm-hmm.
Vietnam already dealt with it. Been like 3 weeks now. There's 0 cases, 0 deaths. They've repatriated all the Vietnamese. They were the first country to do it, and they were the first country to do the SARS to control SARS in 2003. Vietnam is like awesome when it comes to public health. Yeah.
Huh.
And speaking of health, mental health is also very important.
Mental health,
segue.
Transition.
Yeah, very smooth too. It is, and we actually had a really good chat on the slowdown about mental health. For the 2 followers of mine that aren't already followers of Non-Compete, go check out the slowdown on twitch.com/noncompete.
Oh, we should probably introduce ourselves, huh?
Oh yeah. I think I actually started that when we got sidetracked. I'm Breadbeard from Southway Social Club. And next to my,
I'm the radical centrist. I'm in the center.
Oh yeah.
Emerican Johnson of non-compete.
I am Mexie,
everybody.
Of Mexie. and the Vegan Vanguard.
I just caught the first Vegan Vanguard podcast.
Oh, sweet!
This week, I hadn't actually
cool. I need to get on that.
Sit down and listen.
Oh, cool!
I was really happy with it. Yeah.
Which episode?
I'm a big vegan sympathizer, but I can't. I haven't quite gotten on the vegan train.
Oh yeah.
But I'm a vegan sympathizer. I think admirable.
It sounds like a bad thing. Like you're a vegan sympathizer.
Yeah, no, I saw your tweet about that. And I was like,
I do think
nice, EJ.
Veganism's the future for sure. I have some things about I don't know. This is not really the topic. We need to have a whole topic about veganism.
Sure, yeah.
But I think that the thing is that and maybe this is an excuse. Honestly, I might just be bargaining or whatever, but it's I think systemically we need to change it. And I don't feel like an individual really, I understand and I respect people who make that individual choice to be vegan, but we really need to get rid of the whole system because I just don't think that it's you can't, there's no ethical consumption under capitalism. By extension, I don't think individual choices are what's going to be able to end the meat industry. We're going to have to radically dismantle the entire system.
Yeah.
But that might just be an excuse that I'm using. I don't know.
Well, and there's still I've said before, I'm not going to fault someone for kind of following their moral compass. If they feel that's the right thing to do, it's not bad to do it. Just, don't.
Yeah, no, it's, I have a lot of respect. I wish that I had the discipline to do it myself. I do reduce the amount of meat. I've reduced it a lot.
Mm-hmm.
For sure.
That's great. Yeah.
I'm trying. I'm working on it. I hope that one day I will be a vegan as well. Let's put it that way.
Yeah, that's really great.
I've gotten to a point where because I used to eat there was pretty much meat with every meal, and then I moved to I try to eat one meal every day without meat, and now I still do that, but I usually do at least 1 day a week without meat. So
now we get the judgment from Mexie, the official vegan judge.
No,
are we going to vegan hell?
No, I mean, I think it's really great that you're, consciously reducing and things like that. And I mean, that was kind of the point of my vegan TM video, was that we can't solve this with just consumption alone. But I do think it's important. I think it has to be both, right? Because if individuals aren't going to be making that choice, then we're not going to even get close to dismantling the system, right? If people aren't going to kind of analyze that within themselves and then reflect that in their own practices, kind of thing, then how are we going to come together to take down the industry? So I think it's both.
That's true.
Well, yeah, and I think there is this kind of
fair point
concept on the left or misconception that you can just wait around, we're just all talking about and waiting, and the revolution is just going to happen.
Well, the other thing too is that I say this all the time, and I know this is hypocritical of me, because I always say the real solution to veganism is going to be artificial and synthetic meat. Mm-hmm. But that's exactly what liberals always say about capitalism, is that global climate change is not gonna be a problem because we'll invent the technology that'll fix it. And, the machines will be automated, and then then we won't have exploited workers anymore. And it's such a liberal fucking thing to say, but I say it all the time. Mm-hmm. It's just we'll just have synthetic meat. And it's the same exact technocratic liberal. So I'm guilty of it. I'm guilty.
And I'm that's great. I hope that does happen sometime really soon, but it's not happening right now. So
I know.
Don't
self-crit
stuff.
Yeah.
I shouldn't. I can do better. I'm going to start doing better.
Cool.
Sorry.
I mean,
sorry.
Do better.
You're in Southeast Asia. It's a lot easier over there, I think.
You're telling me they have amazing vegan food?
Yeah.
Well, no, actually,
or
the
just
problem
veg.
is that when you get vegan food in Vietnam, sometimes it's vegan-ish. It's more vegetarian.
Yeah. That's still
but I don't know.
A lot better.
I do. I'm doing better. I'm improving.
That's great.
Attack Emerican Johnson.
I'm attacking myself more than anybody else. All right. let's change the subject abruptly before I start feeling really guilty.
Well, how about this way? There is another system that could be broken down, and that we can work to break down now. Including meat is this macho idea of meat, like you're Texan, you're a man if you eat a 20-pound steak.
Yeah.
Can I make a spicy ass take? Can I make a spicy take that I don't know? This might get me.
You can only make a spicy ass take.
I'm so annoyed by people who are like, Donald Trump eats his steak well done with ketchup. It's like, who cares how he eats his steak? That's like such a right-wing attack on Donald Trump. It's like this. That's the kind of thing that reactionaries would do. Yeah. I don't care. Like, there's so many more substantial things we can attack Trump on. Mm-hmm. Am I wrong? Am I the only one who feels that way? I don't know.
No,
it always bothers me.
I completely agree. It's the same when they used to like just show photos of him golfing where he like looked really unflattering in the photo and be like, look how, I guess dowdy and old and out of shape Trump is. And it's just like, why are we really doing this?
I think I did retweet that picture, but you're right. I always feel guilty about it because you know who's really good about that, and somebody we should actually invite to one of these conversations in the future. Thought Slime would be great to have on this in the future. Yeah. But Thought Slime talks a lot about how you shouldn't go after people's personal appearances, and I think that's
absolutely.
True, and I've definitely been guilty of. I retweeted that specific tennis picture, I think that Mexie's referring to, and now I feel a little guilty. But you're right.
I mean, I think I missed.
But like, is that really what we're critiquing him on?
I agree.
Yeah,
sometimes it's
body
like you want to get that
okay,
easy
you don't
shot
like
in. Right, exactly. And you got to practice. It's like sometimes it's hard to practice what you preach with this stuff because I always talk about how you shouldn't go after somebody's intelligence whenever like there's no correlation between being like a fascist and intelligence, and the same thing goes for body shaming. It's like it's not a healthy way to conduct ourselves if we want to be the change. And
like I get it if anyone out there does that and still wants to do it. I understand that like it's this want to flip the tables and say like, well, he's a he body shames everybody. Well, we can body shame him. And like, I can understand the want for that. And I'm not really, I'm not going to hate you if you do it, but just, consider that. Consider maybe there's so many better angles to take.
Yeah, well, and then understand that when you're doing that, you're basically legitimizing these discourses, right? Like you're legitimizing their language and their oppressive way of talking to other people, right? You're saying that like, this is a burn. It is a burn to look fat or something, it is a burn to look gross, right? Or it is a burn to be unintelligent. So you're just actually legitimizing that that's a bad thing to be when you're making fun of other people for doing it, right? So...
Yeah, like in the comments, they're saying that like Trump's really evil and deserves a shame. I agree that Trump probably deserves some shaming, but like there are so many more substantial things we could shame Trump about.
Yeah,
it feels like it's almost like I feel like it's much more shameful the fact that he like locks babies in cages and
shame him for being evil.
Yeah, exactly.
Shame the evil stuff.
We've got a lot to work with.
But then I mean, like, here's the question though: is like because I wouldn't want to. It's because okay, let's use a totally different example because there's something that I kind of believe in, which is that let's talk about like guillotine jokes for a second because it's kind of a similar thing, right? It kind of like glorifies violence and everything. But I've made like a few little like in my Halloween special, we like pulled out a guillotine and chopped off Elon Musk's the shark's head, and it was just kind of like a catharsis, and I feel like sometimes that's okay and. Maybe I'm wrong. Maybe we'll discover that I'm wrong. I don't know. But like, I feel like sometimes that kind of catharsis is okay because people are like, sometimes we do need to vent and like let off a little steam. Does that make sense?
Yeah, no, I definitely understand that. And like with the guillotine jokes, personally, they don't bother me because it's again, it's not like like you're shaming something. And I hope for most people, it's not actually meant to say we're going to go out and chop everyone's head off. It's a symbol.
Right.
I don't know. I mean, I think I think there can be like guillotine jokes that are like cute and funny. But I also think that there's a lot of guillotine jokes where I just see people kind of like, frothing at the mouth and being like, yeah, like fuck these guys, like fuck whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And
there
I
could
guess
be an edge to it sometimes.
There's definitely some edgy means, and I don't like. I'm not going to shame people for doing that necessarily, but I'm really not into it because I think you have to be really, really self-aware, and I think this is what we were kind of talking about last time in terms of like why it's important to be to have compassion and to have empathy and to really know yourself and to know where you're coming from, so that you're not coming from a place that is coming from just sheer anger or a want for revenge or things like that. And because I think that for a lot, like for someone like you, Emerican Johnson, like you've obviously done a lot of that work, and so if you make a guillotine meme that's like kind of like, oh, we're shopping off Elon Musk, like haha, I think that's fine for you, but then I guess I don't trust a lot of people in the movement, especially on the online left, to actually receive that in a way that is kind of self-reflexive and that understands that like this is actually not great to be like frothing at the mouth for this kind of stuff,
Right. Well, yeah, I certainly don't want to actually advocate for like pulling out the guillotine in real life at all. I think that what I always try to do is I think about like because some people are just let's take a step back here for a second. So like because we do face violence every day, right? Like the working class faces violence, and I think that, so for instance, like restricting healthcare is a form of violence, right? Mm-hmm. And so like I think about people who, well, like myself, I've been restricted from having healthcare when I've needed it in the past in the USA, not as badly as some people, but then I have friends who really need it, and like there are people who are hoarding insulin. Is there like a case to be made that some people, like, I don't know, like they're literally being physically harmed by capitalism, mm-hmm. and this might give them some sort of release? Is that valid, or is that
yeah, so like I made a whole
I'm asking, I'm not even really sure what the answer is.
Yeah, I mean, and I'm not sure either. This is just kind of my opinion, but yeah, I made a whole video about violence and about how, the slow systemic violence of the system is the violence that is the most important and impactful and insidious in terms of actually harming people, but that the only violence that we tend to focus on in the media or whatever is the kind of like spectacular violence that erupts because people are being so oppressed and so subjected to violence or whatever. So I'm not saying that like obviously that's not valid or that like we shouldn't engage in any of that ever. But again, I guess I think that like, yeah, it's one thing to have a cathartic release, but I think that like we talked about last time, like the feeling of anger and the feeling of like wanting revenge, like anger is usually an emotion that's actually masking other emotions, like just hurt or fear or sadness, right? So like maybe the release to that would be like crying about it and like hugging your friends and like consoling, you know what I mean? Like maybe the release doesn't necessarily have to be like, oh, I want to like kill other people, Absolutely.
And like vengeful justice a lot of times that's not going to give you the release that you wanted. And you can even in capitalist media, that's kind of like a time-honored message that, the person gets their revenge and then they don't have that closure that they wanted, unless it's just like a shoot 'em up. But don't evolve your moral philosophy off of like Roadhouse or like a shoot 'em up.
Yeah, exactly. And like I
want to make Patrick Swayze Christmas.
And like I want to make clear that I'm not saying, like, I do think that, violent resistance and things like that is completely valid in the face of this kind of violence. And I'm not saying anything like that. And I'm not even going to shame anyone who's like, yeah, well, I do want to like freaking, you think about like the Black Panthers and things like that, and like the violence that they face, and like Angela Davis being like, you want to ask me about violence? Like, look what's happening to the community. You know what I mean? So obviously I'm not saying that like oppressed people should never engage in violence or anything like that. What I'm doing right now is I'm just like warning from the kind of, the wisdom and philosophy of like Buddhist Buddhist ideology and wisdom, to be like, I don't know, you know, you have to just know where you're coming from. And if you're sitting there, I guess you just have to like self-crit. If you're sitting there like really loving all these guillotine memes and like just furling up your anger and like having that just boil inside of you, you know, that's fine, I guess. But it's just a warning to be really critical of where you're coming from, because if you then want to take that step to create a better society afterwards, you have to make sure that like in the process of stewing in this anger and this revenge-filled fantasies, you don't end up becoming a person that's not actually able to create that better society, you know?
Yeah, and I think like anger can be definitely useful, and I'm not saying people don't get angry. As a matter of fact, I would say a lot more people who are passive need to get angry and fed up. But so it's not that no one's saying, and I think, you know, from the last stream, a lot of people maybe got this message. No one here that I think is saying just sit back and let love fix things and, you know, pray the fascia away or something. But be cognizant of what you're doing, you know, use that anger in a productive way, not just a vengeful or retribution method.
Well, also I want to say what Mexie's been doing. Like Mexie, you're probably one of the only people who I think is correcting back in the. So I guess what I would say is like you talked a lot in at least one of your videos, probably more, about like how in political spaces, generally speaking, it tends to have this kind of like traditionally masculine role-based means of like elocution and rhetoric, where it's like a lot of debate and it's confrontational and there's just like this aggression. And definitely I think that like the violence-oriented memes and jokes and humor is very much like super normalized. It is basically the norm. Whereas the more like quote unquote traditionally assumed feminine roles and behavior, like you talk about, like hugging and crying and compassion, that's like much less present in most political spaces, especially within like leftist, you know, radical leftist spaces. And I think that, you know, what you're doing and what we're talking about right now doesn't even begin to like we're not in danger of overcorrecting in the opposite direction, because the culture is so focused more towards the violent and the confrontation and the and the, you know, anger, that it's like I don't think introducing some of this into the space is like we're not approaching the point where we should worry about being too peaceful as a movement. I guess is what I'm saying.
Exactly. Yeah, no, I'm really glad you brought that up, because the reason that I talk about this so much and I'm very adamant about bringing this up all the time is because, I never really hear this or see this in any of the spaces that I mean, not any of the spaces that I'm in, but a lot of the spaces that I'm in, and especially in the online space, which is where a lot of people get radicalized, right? So I bring this up, and everyone always, all the time, wants me to be like, okay, but make all these caveats, but like, oh, but of course the material conditions, oh, but of course we need violence in this and this situation. It's like as if I have to say that, right? And I keep being like, I made a whole video about violence. You can go watch it, right? I'm saying everything that you're telling me, right? I feel like people are like radical splitting to me about like, well, this was how a revolution works, you know? And I'm I'm aware. I'm just trying to insert something that we're not talking about, right? Because like, of course, like we need all of these methods, and for people who are being violently oppressed by the system, like, of course, like they're being forced to erupt in violence just to protect their very lives. Like they're being forced to do that. So that's obviously understandable. But if you think about, you know, spreading class consciousness and things like that, we also have to, we have to make sure that we unlearn all of the systems that are colonizing us, and then through that, we can lead by example for other people, right? Because I saw someone tweet this recently, and it was really, really great, that, you know, a lot of people don't come into leftism by just sitting down and reading Marx, like out of the blue. They just feel, I'm going to pick up Marx today. You know, that's not how a lot of people come into the movement. A lot of people come into the movement just because they're people with empathy and compassion that care about other people, and they see people suffering, or they themselves are suffering. And then they come in because they're like, we need to fix this, right? So people come into it largely through caring and through being caring, emotional, compassionate people. So we want to welcome them into a space where we ourselves are being compassionate to one another, and we ourselves are opening space for a lot of this kind of collective healing and collective grieving, and just collective ideation of the future.
Absolutely. I actually just yesterday or the day before retweeted someone. I want to make this my new channel tagline. It was you don't start becoming a leftist by reading Marx. You start by caring about people.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
That's why that's why I chose this name. That's kind of what I want to center my. That's what I hope to center that people get, that's the center of my channel, is kind of the same thing. Yeah, I don't see enough people. There's so much theory, and that's good. And I'm not saying me talking about compassion does not negate other people talking about rising up or theory or any of the other things. That's great. It's awesome. But diversity of tactics, diversity of message.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Good.
There's something I wanted to bring up too, because we touched on this a little bit last time we were talking. I think it's really fascinating though. It's something that pisses people off a lot when we talk about it. So let's go there. Materialism. I'm a materialist. All right. And I believe that, Marx, one of the things that made Marx revolutionary in the way that he thought was the way that he applied materialism to dialectics and to politics. And, so I think it's really important to say that. But have any of you read Zen and the Art of Motorcycle Maintenance?
You recommended it me before, and I actually really want to.
It's a book. I like the book. There's like good stuff in it and bad stuff in it. I think it's got it starts out okay. It gets really good in the middle, and then by the end of it, it sucks. Like I hate the ending of the book. Like he kind of just like loses me at the end of the book. But anyway, he does have some really good lines in it and stuff. And one of the things he talks about is in the scientific method, right? Which is like probably the most materialist, empirical, deterministic thing in the world. And in the scientific method, it's like all empirical and all like material based, except for there's one part of it that's kind of artistic and idealistic, not materialistic, and that's the hypothesis, right? Like you have to have this kind of creative kernel, right?
Yeah.
When you're first setting up the experiment, and then you go in and you materially find it out and that sort of thing. So like it's like, and I think that this is such a half-baked idea. I'm still kind of trying to figure out how to talk about this because haven't seen it. If anybody in the chat, by the way, I'm watching the chat. There's a lot of really, really good discussion in the chat. If anybody in the chat knows about people who have written about this or like resources where I can learn more about, like if somebody's already talked about this, I'd love to know that. But anyway, okay. So with Marx's materialism, Thought Slime talked about this a little bit too on Twitter. I know that. But with Marx's materialism, it's like there has to be a point where we have to make a moral, non-materialistic decision, which is that like it's not a good thing for people to be starving and poor and suffering. Like there's no way to like materialistically arrive at that conclusion. Right? Does that make sense? Unless I'm wrong. If somebody has a material argument for that, let me know. But you have to like for Marx's materialist analysis to work, you have to at some point early on in there make the decision that it's not okay for people to suffer. And so then from there you can look at the material and say like, okay, well this is what materially causes people to suffer, and this is how we can materially solve it, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So like we have to, I do think we have to inject some kind of a moral or a idealistic perspective into this discussion.
A professor of mine, an art professor actually, of mine once said that everything that's, which I don't remember exactly what he said, but everything that's important is the why, the what, and the how, or the how, the what, and the why. What, the how, and the why, actually. So the what being what's identifying the problem or what your goal is, anything like that. The how of how you actually achieve that, and the why is just as valid as why is that important. And that the why is not as, it's more abstract. It's not as obviously material,
and
but it's valid.
And if you think about it, that requires really, really radical empathy, right? Because you have to not only believe that nobody should suffer, but you have to believe that everyone should have their material needs taken care of, regardless of whether or not they work in society. You know what I mean? So let's say someone can't work for whatever reason or whatever. Doesn't matter. They should still be 100% taken care of. And compared to the ethos or I guess, ideology that we're under right now, that is really, really a radical position. And that takes empathy for people to understand that everyone's humanity, everyone should have human dignity. Everyone should be able to have all these things, whether or not they give us something in return, right? That is a really compassionate position. And for a lot of people, like for a lot of conservatives, they don't believe that at all. And that's why they're conservatives, you know?
Yeah. I butchered because there were some people in the chat who pushed back a little bit on the whole hypothesis being idealistic. So I butchered it a little bit. I just looked up some of the excerpts. So one of the things that he was talking about, and I think this is actually exactly what we're talking about maybe, and I don't want to go out of my depth. I'm not a scientist, so I know enough about this to be dangerous. I'm speaking from uncertainty, but what Pirsig argued, the author of Zen and Their Motorcycle Maintenance, was that like for every experiment or fact or whatever, there's an infinite number of hypotheses, theoretically. You could test an infinite number of hypotheses until you find, like to try to find the most exactly correct answer to a scientific question. And like, that is almost impossible. So that's where, the word that, so it's a pretty interesting book. I think I really do encourage people to read it if they're interested in this kind of stuff. But so Pirsig analyzed like the Greek thought and Buddhist thought and all these different thoughts. And he found like this, he called it quality. It's this kind of like, I think it's what you might call it the Tao, but it's basically this just like this essence of like what is I know it's not really what's good, but quality is the best way to put it. I'm kind of butchering this, but it's like it's what we as humans consider when we narrow down to like the best hypothesis to consider first. So there's this kind of intuitive leap. Let's put it that way. There's an intuitive leap when we're trying to, because if I wanted to say like, what is the best shape for a bridge or whatever,
were you gonna say taco?
For a taco, what's the best shape for a taco? Let's go.
I really thought you were going to say taco.
There are an infinite number of shapes and materials and that sort of thing we can use. But we make like an intuitive, and yes, it is based in material, and there's all this stuff happening in the human mind, right, in the background. But there's something there's some process that our brain, our consciousness uses to like eliminate a lot of options and kind of zero in on the most appropriate options first. Does that, you know what I'm saying? So, and it's not a completely materialistic process. There's subconscious processes happening that kind of guide us.
Yeah. And if people are interested in this kind of stuff, like in my field of geography, like I did a lot of studying into like science and technology studies, and, feminist critiques of, I guess, positivist science, because, and all these authors and scholars and whatever point out that even in the most like quote unquote objective science, it's always influenced by broader societies, beliefs and biases and things like that, right? So the political and the social spheres are always involved in determining A, what we think is useful to even look at, B, the hypotheses we have or whatever, the way that we go about things and things like that. So it's really, really interesting. And they kind of break down how, a lot of science, which was male dominated for a really long time and like white dominated for a really long time, led to a lot of, very racist conclusions, or even about, history where it was concluded that, the hunters were the ones who went out and I guess provided for the community. And then, through more, directed and through more study, we find actually that no, it was a lot of the women's labor that actually did that, right? So what we come to, like the conclusions that we come to, and even our starting points, like all of that cannot be disconnected from the political context and the social context that we're in. So to say that science is just like 100% objective and that's it, I don't know.
I love this. If you study the history of the philosophy of the mind, and the theory of consciousness and how the brain works and that sort of thing, there's a lot of evidence that that science has just completely followed whatever was like trending and popular at the time. So like back in the Middle Ages in Europe, they thought that the mind was basically like your spirit and there were demons in your mind, and it was like spiritual because religion was like the hot tech of the time. And then the Age of Enlightenment came out, and the age of steam, and they were like, oh well, the brain's more like a machine. It's like a steam engine, and there's like all these little mechanical parts inside your brain and electrical mechanic parts, and that's how it works. And then computers came along, and they're like, no, the brain's like a computer. And so it's like, and it's just like, it's literally like, and now we're saying it's like neural networks, and that's since the age of the internet. Yeah. And it's like, it's literally just like following whatever the big hot trend of humanity is going through. That's like what we decide consciousness is modeled on.
Just wait until we get interesting.
Yeah, exactly. What's the next big thing? It's like, it really makes you wonder. But yeah, it's really fascinating. It's interesting how all this stuff is sort of like correlated, because at one of the most fascinating things I think about all of existence, like reality, is just the fact that like at the end of the day, we really do not understand how consciousness works. We don't understand how our brains work, and we don't even understand, like on a very personal level, ourselves. Like all of life is a journey to try to fucking figure out who the hell we are, and what's important. And I guess I'm rambling at this point, but that's the stuff that gets me really excited.
I like actually what Luna drew a picture for me for one of my videos that I said we're basically we're a blob of fat and electricity piloting a meat mech.
Right. That's all
none of this makes sense. We're getting these like feeds into our eyes, and we're interpreting as pictures. We're basically hallucinating 24/7. None of this comes down to 100% like objective. This is how it is, of objectivism.
And I think that one of the best. There's all these different systems for trying to decide truth and decide what's important and find ourselves and that sort of thing. And that's where I think that Buddhism is really interesting, and it's something that leftists, I think, should at least sort of have a basic grasp on, because it's all about suffering and ending suffering.
And selflessness.
Selflessness. And Taoism is all about selflessness and abandoning power, giving up the ego and
well, Taoism is really cool. I've actually been reading up more on that versus Buddhism, or not. Versus Confucianism. So they're basically the two, like before Buddhism came into the picture, major philosophies of like China and East Asia, and they're kind of at odds with each other. And I kind of find Taoism to be quite anarchist. Because Confucianism,
I've seen Angie has a video, I think, on the Tao and anarchism.
Oh, really?
It's like really, it really goes in more depth. Angie speaks,
yeah. So for anyone,
sorry, I interrupted.
Chinese, no, that's fine. That's what a chat is. Tao in Chinese means path. It means a path, right. And it's kind of this idea of there's just a natural flow of the universe. There's just the path of the universe, and that's not to mean that there's like the different people interpret things and they add in different like religious and spiritual aspects to it. But at its core, as a philosophy, it's not saying that there's like fate necessarily, but it's just saying that there is a natural course, and if you you don't try to you don't try to attack it too much. You try to work with what seems natural and I'm pausing here because there's a word I'm trying to think of, like I guess like natural, like just seems like I'm trying to jump around the word common sense because I hate the word And I think like
it's the
a
path
lot
of
of
least
that,
resistance, right? Like
Yeah,
there's
exactly.
one of the what are in the Tao Te Ching, they're like little stanzas, and one of them is like, you should be as a leaf in the stream, and it just kind of like goes where it needs to go. But and I've read, I've read other texts about that same thing. It doesn't mean that you just like do whatever's easiest at any given time, because like really, if you abandon your ego, and if you kind of like adopt the virtuous path, then sometimes the easiest thing to do is actually like technically quite difficult. Like if there's a burning building and there's like a baby in the house, it'll be easier for you to go in and save the baby than to stay outside. That's the way that, like, I guess if you're doing Taoism correctly, then you will like be pulled by the universe. You will feel yourself compelled to go and do like virtuous things and be humble and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera.
That's why I find it to be anarchist, because I think the way I kind of interpret it is there was a more natural and least resistance method, pre industrialization, or pre not civilization, but like, when we were more agrarian, we were working together, we started building farms, making communities, and then basically some assholes started saying, hey, this God told me that I should be the leader of all of you. It's all downhill from there.
I think that conversation was a little bit more violent.
By the way, exactly how it went in English too. His name I think it was
like conk on the head. This is my land. Get the fuck out of here.
Yeah.
Intrepid Panda offered the word intuitive, which I think might be a word you were.
That's a very good one. Yes. Also, I see some people. Da Dao would be literally big knife. That's why that's sword. There's so many homophones in
it's
China.
Like in Vietnamese, Zao means knife, and Zao means beard. Like Zao and Zao. Luna's gonna yell at me.
So what do you call a razor then? Please tell me it's Zao.
The word knife and the word beard are very similar, except there's like a tone difference or something. I don't know. Who cares? I'm wrong. Don't listen to me. You didn't come here to listen to me.
To go before we started jumping down ancient philosophy, Mexie, you were saying something about like actually you were saying it too, EJ, that just letting is not passive. Letting, and that's actually my next video I'm writing a script for now, is love is not a machine that you set to auto and you go take a nap. And I think that's where a lot of people get angry. And a lot of people use it that way, and they should be angry at them. That they're like, like Marianne Williamson, just love will win. Just sit back and let love do the work. Where's that love coming from? Like you've got to do it. You've got to put in the work. Love doesn't just do it for you.
Yeah, no, I really, really like that, and I just wanted to say that. I think a lot of people push back on this stuff because of the way that it has been co-opted by like white yoga kind of culture
and commercialized
and commercial culture and things like that. But I just wanted to point out that, none of this, and this is why people like, I think we should just encourage people to go read about Taoism and go read about Buddhism and really like grapple with a lot of these complex topics, because, none of the thinkers that I'm pulling this from are white people. None of the thinkers that I'm pulling this from are just like, this isn't like a bourgeois white thing. You know what I mean? And I'm actually pulling this mostly from people of color, from, people like, Asian philosophies and things like that. But then also people like Adrienne Marie Brown and just a really amazing, like radical thinkers. And so I think that people should really spend some time sitting with this, because if you think that we're just sitting here reading like The Secret and then trying to come out here and tell everybody like, hey, everyone, we're going to give you some tips and tricks for how to just sit back and accept the status quo and, be happy with that and just love, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous. Right. And I feel like we are articulating a lot of this fairly well and fairly clearly. But again, I think I would just say, like, go to the sources to learn more, because on the surface of it, you could hear something like, oh, be a leaf in the stream, and be like, oh, well, that just means that you just sit back and you accept the status quo, right? But no, you have to actually, like, you have to get in there and understand the nuance and understand the whole bigger, broader picture, right? This is something that you have to like understand in a holistic way, not just try and parcel out little bits and pieces of it and say, oh, well, this is bourgeois and pointless, you know?
Yeah. And it's not a very, like, the other thing too is I think it differs a lot from like a lot of the European originated philosophies, because it's definitely not like prescriptive, and it's not like a set of instructions where it's like, I mean, there are certain things like Buddha did say, like, just sit down and meditate, like that is instruction. But a lot of this stuff is, it's just meant for you to grapple with, and it's meant for you to engage with very, very actively. Yeah. You know, whereas Plato or Aristotle, they would just be very like the lecturer who's just telling you, like, this is the truth, this is it, take this, run with it, you know. Whereas like some of these like Buddha and the Taoist writers and this sort of thing, they wanted you to literally meditate on these things, you know, and like literally sit down and grapple with them and try to incorporate them into your life and chew on it a lot more. So
and test them. This is what Rev Left Radio talks about all the time, where it's like, we're not asking you to just believe these things, right? It's a whole set of wisdoms about, you know, the thought, you know, your thoughts, your emotions, like the inner self. So you need to go and practice and see and test it for yourself. Like, is this true? When I sit down and do this, does it turn out that I believe this is true, or does it turn out that I believe this is false, right? And you're not being asked to believe anything without testing it for yourself and seeing if that's true. And yeah, I mean, actually, a lot of this stuff I get because I work primarily with Indigenous people in Canada, and I was sitting with some elders actually the other week, and they were talking all about this, about the importance of compassion, about the importance of restorative justice and all of that stuff, and how that, like, those ideas and living that truth in yourself is such a radical break from kind of the Western philosophy, the capitalist philosophy, the colonial philosophy. And so this is important stuff. Like, this isn't just like some bourgeois crap that isn't helpful for anyone.
Yeah. And Radical Reviewer, like, by the way, hi Radical Reviewer, hi Kamazats. Like, there's a lot of awesome people in the stream right now. But Radical Reviewer said earlier, intuitive, common sense, etc., are bad because they are about pretending to know what you don't understand. And that's where I think it's important, and it's something that Piercy talked about in the book Zen or Motorcycle Maintenance. Something Mexie was just talking about with Buddhism. It's like your intuition. I do think intuition is important, but let me say first that you have to follow your intuition up with material testing and scientific method kind of shit. Like, you have to go in and make sure that, you know, your intuition, because you can definitely be wrong, you know. But I think that, again, and like, would love to hear anybody in the chat push back against this, because I think it's really a fascinating question. But I've thought about this so much, and, you know, like, every time I'm reading any kind of philosophy or political text or anything like that, you know, only human intuition can lead us to the first basis for all of this, which is that it's bad whenever human beings suffer. You know, it's not good for people to be starving. It's not good for people to be in pain. It's not good for people to be wanting clothing or shelter, right? I think that's like that's the first step of, like, politics, of philosophy, of everything. I think that's like kind of like square one, and you cannot arrive to that through anything but some kind of deep-seated, call it intuition. I don't know. Tell me if I'm wrong. I mean, is there some?
I do feel
am I wrong
between, like, intuition and common sense? Like, I really don't care for the word common sense, because it implies that it's sense because it's common, which means it's sense because it's just been accepted for a long time. So I definitely don't care for common sense, but I think, that's different than intuition. You know, I do feel that is more of a
common sense is like often wrong, for one thing. Like, they're like, you know, like it used to be common sense that when you sneezed, it was like a demon trying to escape. You know what I'm saying? So, like, the common sense can also be tested and you know, taken apart and dismantled and, you know, put back together better and that sort of thing. But intuition, I think, when I say intuition, and again, there's like often not really great language. It's like the Tao just means like the way, you know, like that. This language gets really squishy. sometimes. But there's some like for us to say that like communism is the best way to go or anarchism is the best way to go. It's like, why? Well, it's because that's like, it makes the most people happy. It decreases suffering. It increases material, safety for everybody. It's like, well, why is that good?
Mm-hmm.
Why is that what we should be going towards?
Yeah.
There's a certain point where all of this comes from. There's a certain, it's like the seed from which all of this grows. And it all, we can materially test like what's the best way for people to have food and clothing and shelter and to not suffer. We can material test all those things. We can materially arrive at conclusions of those things, but it all starts with an intuitive assumption, which is that people should not suffer.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I also just want to jump in because a lot of times, and again, I always bring it back to this kind of Orientalist framing where it's like on the right, we have the West, progress, technology, rationality, science, masculinity, whatever. And on the other side, we have femininity, the East, intuition, emotion, spirituality, all of this stuff. And then all of that is just really written off as, well, this is not useful or anything like that. And so like a lot of times you'll get like a lot of people be like, oh, women's intuition, like that's complete bullshit. You know what I mean? Whereas like a lot of the times it's like, no, our intuition is like, we've developed our intuition because we've been gaslit so much from like the society around us and whatever.
It's a survival mechanism.
Yeah, but also it's like, we know when this is bullshit. You know what I mean? Like I know when, if like a man is, you know what I mean? Anyway, so like that's just a whole other thing. But I think, and a lot of people have made these kind of comparisons that like, capitalism, like these grand systems that oppress us are like Big Daddy, like they are gaslighting us all the time. Like we're just being told all of this stuff all the time. Like, well, if you failed, then it's your own fault. You just got to work harder. Like just prove yourself a little bit more. Like it's not us. It's not me. It's you.
Bootstraps.
Yeah. Bootstraps, right? It's not me. It's you. And like on an intuitive level, you can just feel it in your gut. Like, no, that's not true. Like you're being disingenuous. I see through you. And like, I see what your intentions are, and my intentions are different because I want liberation for all. I want compassion and empathy and caring for all, you know what I mean? So those are all things that are really important, but are, I don't know. Yeah.
Yeah. The more that we're talking about it, I'm starting to feel like common sense and intuition are actually sort of polar opposites, because intuition is this kind of following a logic chain versus common sense is just, it's raise your hand in the chat. We can't see you. If you, If you at one point in your life thought it was common sense that you had to work for money to make a living, and then like just what else would there be,
Yeah. Or competition breeds excellence, or all the other things that we take for granted.
It's common sense. Like, well, of course, because
growing up in the South, it's common sense that a man has to take care of a woman and say yes, ma'am, and open the door for her and blah 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 blah. Like that was definitely like, I took it completely for granted when I was a kid.
So as a Southerner, I still grapple as a feminist and as bisexual and all these things. I still grapple with a lot of these. Like I still want to hold the door open for a woman specifically. Not that it's wrong to hold open a door for people, but
this is a total aside. I just want to get this off my chest though. But like I was raised by my mom to get the door for everybody. She was just like, get the door for everybody. If it's an old man or a young man or a woman or whatever, a child, just like, if there's somebody behind you walking up, just get the door for them. Like don't go through first. That was the way I was raised, right? So like when I was in California for 2 months, I definitely got the stink eye from some women when I would I would be like at the store or something, and I would just be like getting the door for them. And I know that they thought like, this fucking misogynistic asshole. And I was just like, it was just my Southern mom's like guilt training me, and I was like, I'm just saying, if you were one of those people in California and I offended you, I'm sorry. It was just my mom brainwashing me to get the door for like every human being. So
no, like I will get the door for every even if I'm at the door and somebody is a bit further back and I see them kind of walking quickly, I'm like, oh, I'll just wait there until they come and I'll keep the door. And usually they're just like, oh, like thank you or whatever, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
But no,
sometimes it creates like awkwardness though, where like they're a little too far away and you hold it and then they have to like run to get it's like, oh, I just made your life worse actually.
Yeah, this made a whole scene out of nothing that nobody wanted in the first place. One thing that I miss, and I catch myself doing this, and I'm trying to stop it. Is like when I'm in class, I like to say yes, ma'am, and yes, sir. That's a very Southern thing that's been built into us.
Yeah.
And I like it as long as you're doing it with everyone, especially kids. You like showing the sign of respect, but it is also very gendered. So
yeah,
it's start calling my kids yes, comrade. I don't know.
Yes, Dongchi. That's the way to do it.
Yeah.
We got a comment earlier in the chat. I thought this was interesting from David Desor that says, and I think this is really fascinating. Okay, I think you can probably derive these goals, this whatever intuition or whatever that people shouldn't suffer biologically, with empathy being an emergent property of an evolved brain. And so, absolutely, yeah. It's like I'm not saying that like God or Jesus Christ or Buddha or whatever like magically put this in our brain that this is our intuition. I do think that probably there is maybe it is a survival thing that evolved into us or whatever, but to me it's like that's fascinating. We should study that. We should try to figure out why. But also it like also doesn't really matter why. Does it matter why? Because like the fact is we feel that it's like a strong driving force of our species, that like we want to take care of each other. At least that's the way I feel, and that's the way that I think, Breadbeard in Mexico, that's the way a significant number of us feel. That's the way we want to build our civilization, our society, however you want to call it. So it's like, yeah, I think it's fascinating. Like, why do we have that? Can we figure that out? Will we ever really understand why? But on the other hand, it's like, even if we never figure out why, does the why matter that much? I mean, does it? Open question. I don't know.
Yeah.
Does the why matter? Like, could we scientifically figure out like, well, oh, this is all just biological, and then like, I don't know, like, would we ever scientifically decide like, you know what, that's all actually horse shit. It's just this glitch in our brain, and we actually should have, like neo-feudal capitalism and murder the hell out of each other. Yeah, you know what I'm saying? Like, is that going to happen?
I guess we're stuck with this caring about each other bullshit.
Yeah. I feel like there's always a danger, in trying to, scientize things that we feel, or scientize our intuition and things like that. And I think that part of the reason I don't like that is because, again, that makes it seem as though in order to become valid, things need to have scientific merit, which just once again puts you in that dichotomy of like whatever male rational versus spiritual female kind of thing. Or just like West East, like kind of like progress versus backwardness, So I'm like, I don't even like the idea of legitimating the discourse that like in order to be valid, something needs to be scientifically provable or whatever. But I think there's also that danger of like, if we just say that, oh, well, the reason we have such radical empathy is because of our evolution, because that was advantageous to us as a species, in our early development as a species, it was selectively advantageous to us to care for one another and take care of one another. Then, people can make the argument now that, oh, well, we're so far away from that kind of living. We're so far away from the Paleolithic kind of thing now that, well, we don't really need that now. We can all just go to work and buy our things and be safe in our home. So the end, right?
Yeah, I guess my question is like, does it change anything? If we found out like 100%, if we proved. And I'm just, again, I'm not judging. I think it's a good question that David Desor asks. So I'm not judging anybody for asking the question, or I think it's a fascinating question. I want to know the answer myself. But if we find out the answer, does it change anything? If we find out that like this specific gene, we picked up this gene 300,000 years ago, and that's what gives us this specific driving empathetic component to our psyche, blah, 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 blah. Does that change anything? Right. And then the other question I would have is like the fact that we don't know for sure right now. Does that mean that we're supposed to? You lost my audio, or can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Or did I lose people?
Yeah, you lost us. Think your headphones are dead? Hey, Mexie.
Hey.
Did you hear the one about the? Oh. I have a good joke. I'm going to tell the joke while.
Okay, Steve. Well, actually, okay. Maybe I'll just respond because I. Like,
okay, go ahead.
Because that's
what I was hear my joke anyway.
No, please tell the joke. Please tell the joke. But this is on to what you were saying, because I think that's exactly what I was saying. In that, if like that I don't think it matters personally, but if we do actually figure that out, then I think that like disingenuous people who want to support the status quo could use that and say, you know, since we're so far away from like the Paleolithic, or from the conditions in which our radical empathy would be selectively advantageous, then it's not something that we need to care about now, you know?
Right.
So I'm saying people
use
that against,
like we're not gonna wait, right? Like we're not gonna wait until we know, right? Like this is the specific reason why. Like we got to continue our society, our civilization. Hey, look, we took over Breadbeer's channel.
We did
whatever we want.
Okay, well,
violate terms of service. Okay, I got a joke. This is not going to violate terms of service, though. All right. So, I have a friend who's a centipede. Okay.
Yep.
And we were going to go to see a movie. The movie started at like 8:00 and it was like 7:20. And so I was like, all right, I'm going to go start. It was cold outside, you know? So I'm going to go start the car, get the heater going. So I got outside and start the car, get the heater going. And I'm sitting there waiting. I'm waiting. It's like 30 minutes go by. It's like, we got 10 minutes to make it to the movie theater. I go back inside and I'm like, hey, centipede, what the hell's taking so long? We got to go to the movie theater. And he's like, I'm still putting on my shoes.
Oh.
That's the only joke I know, I think.
That's awesome. That's a really great joke to know. So yeah, that's great.
Sorry about that. Breadbeard is gone. So I guess we should just keep waxing
sure,
on.
Yeah. So, yeah, no, I agree. Like we're obviously not gonna like wait until we know why we have radical empathy or anything like that. But I'm just saying that we don't really need to know why. And I was just saying really that like I think if we did know why, then people might use that to be like, oh well, it's not valid anymore.
And I was gonna say before I rudely got revolted by my technology. Is Timid Fim somewhere said in here? By the way, hi Timid Fim. I really like your videos. Cannot find it now, but she said at some point, why always matters to a degree. I want to make the difference that, like earlier, I was talking about like the why, as in why you're doing something, kind of going forward. That's not really what they're saying right here. What we're saying now is we're saying like, why did we end up this way? Is like, what was the root cause? Why does that even matter? Not the why you're doing something. So there is kind of two whys there. So that the why going forward, why you're doing something is absolutely important. And that's kind of what we're talking. That's what this whole stream is about.
Yeah. It's like the whole question. It's like this is such a dark thing, but speaking of the why moving forward thing, and I think it's another question that philosophers have also often asked throughout history is like, why don't we just kill ourselves? Like, why do we continue living? Especially considering like when there's so much pain in life and there's so many bad things that happen all the time. And I think that's something else that like, again, it's intuitive. It's like we want to live. And yeah, that probably is, I'm 99% sure there's like an evolutionary genetic component to that. It's like survival. We don't want our species to get wiped out for genetic scientific reasons. But again, it doesn't really matter like why. The fact is that we do feel this like urge to live. Most of us do. Something Radical Reviewer said again, and I do think this is important to recognize this kind of thing. Radical Reviewer said, I'm just tired of spirit science hippie types claiming they're part of the left. And this is something that I've had conversations with a few people. I've had little debates with Suck My Opinion about this as well. Because there's a huge component of the left that is like anti-religion, and I'm not religious myself. I'm not, like, straight up. I'm at best agnostic. But I don't know. I don't have such a problem with there being like Christian scientists or Buddhist or Christian leftists or Buddhist leftists or spiritual leftists. I don't know. That doesn't really bother me as long as we're all kind of like arriving at the same conclusions as far as what needs to be done. Am I alone in that? I don't know. Like, to me, it doesn't bother me if somebody's like, we need to overthrow capitalism and establish a flatly hierarchical society where workers own their own labor and everyone gets taken care of because Jesus wants it to be that way. I don't care if like, that's the reason that, you know what I'm saying? Like, as long as we're walking the same path, I don't care what puts you on it. That's just my personal thing. I'm very comfortable working with people who have different reasons for wanting to go down the same road as I do.
And a lot of people different people get motivated by different things, and some people really need that kind of motivation to find a spiritual connection to get them moving in this direction.
And this will really piss some people off too. Like just what we're saying right now, there are some people who really don't like that. But it's like,
I think it's like not a great position at all, frankly. Like, I understand people's aversion to like organized religion and things like that. But when you think about,
for sure.
When you think about building like broad coalitions of on the left and organizing and, you know, connecting struggles together in order to attack these broader systems, like a lot of people, you know, like the Muslim community, the Jewish community and things like that, like they're being very much oppressed in you know, a lot of ways. And so we can only gain by uniting our struggles with people like that and not being like, oh, you shouldn't be Muslim, you shouldn't be this, you shouldn't be that. I mean, I think that's really paternalistic and condescending and makes it seem like, oh, well, you've just figured out the world, like, you know, for sure how everything works and you're just gonna you know what I mean? Like,
and I will say, just so it's said, rad reviewer, we love you, and we're not like.
Oh no,
no,
yeah, no. I mean,
fact,
like,
I think they said even I think they clarified. They talked about more like what we were talking about earlier, like the
yoga stuff, the secret.
Well, yeah, and Cunhado de Izquierdas, by the way, hola.
So many good people.
Camarada. Said, and I think this is important to also mention while we're talking about the subject. It's also true that self-help grifters want to infiltrate all fields because it's good for their business, but they're not the same as religious people. But there are also religious people and religious grifters and religious and institutionalized religion that we don't really want to welcome into our spaces. Like, you know, if suddenly, who are those freaking, what's that cult that's like goes to gay funerals and protests and stuff? What's the name of
the Westboro Baptist Church.
Westboro Baptist, yeah. If Westboro Baptist Church suddenly was like, oh, by the way, we're also communists.
Yeah.
But everything else that we're doing is the same. It's like, yeah, we don't want to welcome those people. Or the like Catholic Church has a lot of problems.
Scientology or something.
Yeah. Right. Now, I'm not anti-Catholic, by the way, and I'm not saying that like Catholics aren't welcome into the left, but as far as the institution of the Catholic Church, you know, like like that's another situation where it's like we would want to be careful about how that would be integrated.
And I've got so many problems with institutions and religious.
Same can be said for the Lutheran Church, and I don't want anyone to think I'm like staunchly anti-Catholic. That was just the first example that came.
Well, there's also the Catholic Workers Movement, which is, you know, really, really radical. So, you know, in all these different religions, there's like really radical people that are.
Yeah, and there have been priests that fought for communism in the past, and et cetera, et cetera. So it's a case by case thing. You have to you can't. It's like with anything else. You can't. I don't think you can make sweeping judgments. We do have to be on guard, and we have to recognize that there are people who are going to try to infiltrate our spaces and bring toxic ideology and structure into our spaces, and we need to be on guard against that. But we also need to be willing to give a little good faith benefit of the doubt. Early on in the encounter.
Especially because I think that a lot of that is coming from this place of like materialism is the only way forward, right? And to me, that's a really like patriarchal, like I'm right, you're wrong. I'm going to stamp out everything else that you care. Everything that you care about is silly and pointless. And if you're not just a pure materialist, like if you believe in any kind of spirituality or you're a religious person, then get out of here. You know what I mean? Or I'm going to tell you what's right. I'm going to tell you that you're wrong on this, you know? And it's just like, why would you do that to someone? I don't know. Anyway.
No, that's for sure. I think you don't want to essentialize anybody for any attribute they might have.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
You can't just make a sweeping statement.
Yeah. I've never been a big fan of judgment. And I find judgment to be very anti-materialist, by the way. You know, just you could judge behavior. I don't. Yeah, you could judge behavior, but
like exploitation is like, you know, something that I would judge.
Yeah, well, and I should say, I mean, you judge. Judging is a part of, you know, your thought process. There's no way to not judge things and what's going on. But in general, just there's too much judgment of people.
Yeah.
Is what I guess what I'd boil that down to. And
I think what I would say, and this is a little bit of I guess it's a failing of the English language, but it's like judgment is fine, but being judgmental.
There you go.
Maybe not so good.
There you go.
Yeah. I think that's a really great point. Yeah, sorry.
Sorry, I just dropped too much wisdom on everybody. Too much.
Yeah.
Blew your minds.
You really did. Yeah, I was gonna just basically agree. I just realized I didn't really have much more to add to the conversation. Just that, like, yeah. I
mean, and the other thing is that, like, materialism can lead. I think materialism gets abused sometimes because it's like a lot of and I see it a lot with especially like white male leftists a lot.
Yes.
Is this idea that like there's only one material truth.
Yeah.
Whereas like different people are living different experiences and will have different and will be at like different places in the journey. It's kind of like okay, like for instance, you can't make a materialist scientific factual claim about something like in many cases about something like whiteness, right? Intuition is a big part of what defines whiteness. And I've been reading and thinking about this a lot lately. I've been reading like Black what's it called? By Du Bois. Black oh my gosh. Reconstruction. Black Reconstruction by Du Bois. But anyway, talking a lot about like the wages of whiteness and how people benefit from whiteness and how people are adjacent to whiteness. Mm-hmm. And so like it makes me think about when Pete Buttigieg, it was an important moment during the South Carolina debate when Pete Buttigieg said, like everyone on the stage right now is white talking about race, right? And it was just like, okay, so that means that and this is like the age, like if you ever want to really piss off like a political forum, it's like throwing a grenade. Just go in and say, hey, are Jewish people white? And then like sit back and watch the chaos. Uh-huh. And the reason is because, whiteness is not actually a race. It is a power structure that is completely defined by excluding people who are undesirable and benefiting people who are quote unquote deemed to be desirable by the society. And so when it benefits whiteness, Jews are considered white. And whenever it doesn't benefit whiteness, or specific white people, Jews are not considered white. The same can be said for a lot of like white Latino people. Mm-hmm. It's like, and biracial and mixed race people, and this is a huge thing. And it's like, to me, the answer to the question, are Jewish people white? Or is a person who's like 1/3 white, is that person white? Like the answers to those questions, first of all, I don't think can materially be like concretely answered. And if you try to do that, you end up coming up with like really disgusting things, like how the Spanish conquistadors had like the mulattoes and the different like classifications. If you're like 1/14 black or whatever, like you start getting into this like gross territory when you try to materially define who's white. The answer is not as important. The interesting thing is how difficult it is to answer that question. And the reason that it's so difficult is because whiteness is a structure that is completely intuitive and completely defined by making these like arbitrary decisions based on whatever benefits whiteness the most. Does that make sense? And that's just one example. I mean, because you can have the same thing with gender and.
Yeah, it's a social position. It's your relationship to power and your relationship to whatever, and that can change in different circumstances and among different people, right? Like there are some people who would consider you white. Javi just posted that he's white in Spain, but not white in Norway, for example, right? So yeah, it's contextual and it's based on your relation to power, right?
And there's no material answer to the question, is Javi white? It is dependent on context and society and people's ideas and the social situation at the time and the prejudices of the people in the situation. And that's why I always say that, like, and this pisses people off too. So sorry if this is going to piss you off. I'm sorry. But like, I do believe that ideas and our consciousness, our minds are material, like the thoughts that we have, and they have material consequences, and these kinds of internal, completely consciousness based constructs can have real world tangible impact and results. So racism can material affect somebody, affect their wages, affect the kind of house that they live in, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Mm-hmm. So there is some kind of continuity between the ideal and the material, and we have to account for that, I think, in our ideal.
And with whiteness, it becomes very apparent, like when back in like turn of the 20th century, when they would try to define whiteness. I did a video on immigration, and I interviewed this Korean immigrant who'd done a lot of research on this. And there's these amazing different definitions. Like they would, whatever benefited them, they would change the legal definition. Like Syrians were considered white, but then pretty much all of like Arabia and the Middle East was left not white, because Syria was very wealthy and doing good at the time. And then it came in, well, are Indians white? And they said no. And there was actually an Indian naturalized citizen who got their citizenship revoked. And they just kept changing all the time. Even the Germans, there's like these propagandas of these Germans with like these big, like kind of monkey face looking big beard, wearing like a beer barrel. There was like this racism against the Germans.
Oh,
like,
so the posters,
were not considered white.
Well, neither were Irish.
World War I.
Yeah, definitely the Irish were too,
So they were only accepted into the white fold when they appropriately kind of took up that position of power and like just expressed that white power over like indigenous people or black people or whatever. Like you're only brought into the fold based on whether you, I guess, play your role with respect to power or whatever. But yeah, so going back to what Emerican Johnson said, yeah, I think that I think it's ridiculous to talk about things as if there's a material and an immaterial and they're totally separate and one of them doesn't matter and one of them matters kind of thing. Like it's dialectical. It's completely dialectical, right? So there's always a material reality, but our perceptions of that material reality are always going to be I guess, filtered through our own like social positionality and our own biases, our own socialization and things like that. And then similarly, whatever's going on within ourselves and the way that we think about things like as a society and collectively is obviously going to have material effects. So like it's not one or the other. It's always both.
Yeah.
It's like, what if what I see as blue is what you see as green? No, I'm just kidding. No.
I always used to think about that. When I was a kid, I was just like, I always used to think about that. I was like, but you know, other people could be seeing a completely different world than I'm seeing out of my eyes.
Never know. We'll never know.
I will never ever know that. And I thought that was really fucking cool.
I know. That's look at that. You're a born philosopher.
Yeah.
That's amazing. Me too. Because I used to think the same stuff. I also used to think like, I've never seen any of my friends' bones, so how do I know that they're not robots in their skin? And that's to this day. I've never seen a human being's like skin get taken off in their bones. I've never seen them, so I don't know. All right,
you haven't lived.
I'm going down the wrong kind of rabbit hole. I'm gonna go back. I'm gonna reel it back a little bit. Okay, because Javi was talking a little bit more about like how race doesn't exist, and we know that scientifically, like you can't like look at somebody's DNA and tell them what race they are. Like that's like that's pseudoscience. So the best phrase, I can't remember where I picked this up on like Facebook, on like a Facebook leftist group or something, but at some point somebody said race is not real, right? But the effects of racism are real.
Yeah,
there's a material like component to the effects of racism, right? So even though race isn't scientifically real, right? And I know like intellectually that like white people as a race doesn't scientifically exist. I know that I'm white because I know that I benefit from whiteness. Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. I think that's the most important thing to understand about race. And there's components to this with gender as well, because there's the whole idea that like being a man is the norm. And then there's like everything else. It's like when you draw a stick figure, it's a man unless you draw a little dress on it. You know, it's like so like there is this kind of like material, there are material consequences to these things that only exist in our heads. These social constructs that only exist in our heads, they have material consequences, right? So it's like, yeah, we do have to bridge this like continuity between the material and the immaterial. And as Mexie was saying, like solve those contradictions, because sometimes there are like, there's a major contradiction between the material and the immaterial when it comes to race. It's like whiteness does not exist. And yet, because I am white, I have material benefits in my life. That's a huge contradiction between the material and the immaterial, right?
It's because people were using abstract, not real concepts, made up concepts to justify doing real world harm. And now, we have to deal with the repercussions or the ongoing oppression of it that have real world real world effects.
Yeah. It's freaking, and it's probably the most difficult thing for us as humans to do is to dismantle these, especially because the people in power benefit so much from these constructs, and that's why they were erected. It's why whiteness exists. It was to benefit the people in power.
Mm-hmm. And that, and this is another reason why universal compassion is so important, because like for people to see through this, like intuitively to be like, stop gaslighting me. Like, I don't believe all this racist rhetoric. I have universal compassion for all other beings, right? Like that's completely important.
And it's interesting. Like when I teach, I try to be I try to be cognizant and do as much as I can to be the teacher that didn't give me all or to counteract like the teacher that didn't give me all these things when I was young, and be that teacher who does, to kind of stop that common sense that that prevails. So when I'll bring up, the Chinese, I actually was just talking about this yesterday with some of my tutoring students. The Chinese term for Native American, I'm very sorry, literally is in Chinese, Yin Di An. Like it's Indian. Really? Yeah. There is no other word unless you can specifically say the words like native born American. And that's what I'm still, even though it's more of a mouthful, I still try to push that. But I'll go into a very quick kind of lesson about Columbus and how he goofed up and then did a lot of horrible things on top of it being so wrong.
Goofed up is like the most mild way you could put it.
Yeah, look, I'm trying to
genocide. Oops, it's like
oops. Oh my god. But no, and I specifically would say like that sounds pretty horrible, doesn't it? And the kids get it. So there is this intuition. There is this it's like, well, yeah, because they haven't been. Huh?
Yeah.
Kids are empathetic until we stamp it out of them.
Yeah.
Yeah,
that's for sure. That's for sure. That's one thing I did learn in the time that I did teach.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, they get this. Like because I try to be. I don't want to be and I don't want to indoctrinate. I don't want to just go up to and be like, your teacher Breadbeard told you that socialism's good and you should read Marx, and I don't want to push my ideas onto them. But I want to definitely make them think about what they're being told in other instances and by the media and other grown-ups, and to push back against that and let that intuition develop. And but that happens naturally. I don't have to be dogmatic about it. I don't have to.
You just have to teach people to question. That's the most important thing, I think, and that's a big part of our intuition. It's not that our intuition doesn't always give us answers. I think more often than not, it gives us questions. I think that that's really, because think about and this is a fascinating thing about, there's so much I want to talk to you about. Okay. To both of you about, it's like when you're meditating, you start to really realize that the stream of consciousness that's moving into your brain, it's just another sensory input. Okay. And that's a really important thing that I've developed for meditation, is understanding. And it's really great for me because I have so much problem with anxiety and self-doubt and, like all these negative thoughts about myself that are running through my head all the time. Right. Like I've always grappled with this, and it's a big part of my depression. Right. And it's like what I've realized and what I've learned through meditation is that stream of thoughts that flows into my head, it's no different than like what's coming in through my eyes or coming in through my nose or my mouth. It's just sensory input. And I can take those thoughts as they enter my head one at a time. And I can decide I'm going to take this and discard it, ignore it, or I can take it and consider it. And that's something that meditation teaches you to do. And I didn't even realize that was even possible until I was 35 years old. You know what I mean? And it's like, once you realize that stream of thoughts that's coming into your consciousness is not you. And it also helps you when you have shitty thoughts. You know, like whenever I'm like, I've been talking about this a lot. You know, I'm dealing with my neighbors right now with karaoke, and I'll have these shitty thoughts coming in my head, like, man, those fucking people, I can't, you know, like this like really negative thought. And it's like when those thoughts come into my brain, that's not me, you know, and I can take those thoughts and I don't have to feel guilty about having those thoughts. I can just say like, okay, this was a negative sensory input. I don't have to, I can choose not to process this, you know, the way that I used to do.
Every thought doesn't define you. Yeah.
Right. Right.
If you can even make a decision of what defines you.
Yeah.
If that's possible.
I didn't really get to be good at doing that either until my 30s. So it takes a long time. It takes a lot of practice.
Not only was I not good at it, I didn't even know that it was like an option. You know, it was like, I just took it completely for granted that like these thoughts that come in my head all the time, that's me. That's who I am. That's what I am. Yeah. It's bizarre.
So I just also wanted to mention, because like I know a lot of people will think like, oh, this is just kind of bourgeois, or this is like self-help, right? Which is not true, but at the same time, I was like, at the same time, what if it is self-help? Like, what if we just got up here for an hour and talked about helping people deal with their traumas and like unearth them and like feel better and like release themselves from pain, release themselves from suffering.
And we're not asking you to buy our book or our special yoga mat or our equipment. We're just like talking about it. It's just
not every single conversation has to be specifically about revolution. You know?
No, that was the worst thing about Breadbeard got so much pushback about like, why aren't you talking about nothing but revolution 100% of the time? All right, I'm sorry, Mexie, go ahead. I just thought that was so funny how some people reacted to it.
Yeah, but I'll also posit this, because it's just like people will be like, oh, self-help, like, oh, that's ridiculous, right? And I'm just like, how is helping the working class who are traumatized by this system to actually, you know, help themselves heal, to help themselves find space where they can to strengthen themselves, to strengthen their minds, their hearts, to strengthen their feelings of, you know, I'm okay, and I'm not going to let like all of this come in and like destroy me. It doesn't mean I'm going to just accept it and be happy about it. It means I'm not going to let it destroy me. And then here I am, ready to go, ready to fight the revolution, right? Like these things, again, aren't disconnected. But, you know, I was just like, even if it is self-help, like this is not bourgeois. Everyone needs this. Everyone's has anxiety and depression and like self-doubt and like are weighed down by the weight of the world, right? Like this is
and even it doesn't even have to be like just wanting to help people feel more in control and comfortable with themselves is enough is in itself. But even on top of that, it is pragmatic. You know, there are so many kind of the militant left that's like, you know, you got to train your body, we got to be ready to be Rambo
workout today, did you?
But no one talks about, you know, preparing mentally and getting yourself in a good mental state and a good you know, state of self. You if you are wrecked, you know what, I suffer from chronic depression, and I'm not going to turn this camera on unless you see my room right now, because I'm feeling a lot better actually, but I was going through a pretty bad episode at the beginning of the year. And if I can't bring myself to clean my room, how am I going to get out there and fight or march or whatever, you know?
Self-care is praxis for sure. Jordan Peterson strikes again. I wanted to talk about something real quick that Tim and Fem had some really good comments earlier about the race thing. And I think that we could kind of maybe synthesize some of these thoughts. So Tim and Fem was talking about how like blackness is defined by whiteness, right? Like blackness is a social construct, just like whiteness is. But like, it's really important for the black community to like claim blackness and have, you know, black pride and that sort of thing. And then Tim and Fem said, as we deconstruct whiteness, it affects the identities of those affected by it. The black identities being the most deeply impacted. And I think that's really fascinating because like that's such an interesting metaphysical, not not material. It's a fascinating, but it's such an important metaphysical contradiction that we have to like really confront and unravel. And it's not going to be easy because you got to think about it. It's like whiteness doesn't exist. And yet I know that I'm white because I benefit from whiteness. And I, as a white person, need to do all that I can to completely eradicate and reject and destroy this concept of whiteness, right? Which I cannot do alone. We have to systematically destroy whiteness. I can't just say like, oh, I'm not white anymore. I'm not a part of the problem anymore. Like as long as whiteness exists, I benefit from it. Therefore, I need to help to dismantle whiteness, right? However, at the same exact time, concurrently, blackness only exists basically because whiteness was constructed, right? And it's very important during this time while whiteness still exists and while it's not being deconstructed, it's very important for black people to claim their blackness and to have pride in their blackness. And it's like we have to be doing these things like simultaneously. It's like, do you know what I'm saying? And this is a huge contradiction.
Well, we can recognize that how it was caused, and it was this abstract, previously meaningless definition, defining or division. But we can still recognize that the situation that it's caused now exists, and we can like. Yes, the black people exist in Black Lives Matters, and I cannot like if I was to go and try to like claim try to say I'm part of the black community, like that would be fucked up because I'm not. So yes, there is like I'm trying not to dig myself.
Well, here's the thing. I think I might be able to help you get. Okay. So this is a huge metaphysical problem, and I don't think we're going to solve it anytime soon. It's something that we're going to have, but it's so vital that we on the left solve this metaphysical problem, this non-material metaphysical problem, because until we do, the working class is fundamentally fractured. And it's not just along racial lines. It's like, this is what I always say, like, this is why intersectionalism is so important, because the working class will be divided as long as we have gender hierarchy, race hierarchy. These are things that prevent us from coming together and having a cohesive, unified leftist movement. Right. And that's why intersectionalism is so vital and class reductionism is such horseshit, because you can't unite the working class as long as we have all these animosities and these contradictions. And so many of these contradictions that have to do with identity, whether it's gender, sexuality, race, nationality, language, all this stuff, it's metaphysical. It doesn't have a material component at all. There's no material component. I mean, like pigmentation has a little bit to do with it, but like Luna's Vietnamese, her skin is lighter than me. It's not a material thing that makes me white and not her. It's not just that my skin is like lighter than her. There is also colorism, which has to do with skin pigmentation. That's kind of a similar related topic, but it's again, that's got a massively metaphysical component as well. Because for one thing, why is it that society values people with lighter skin more than people with darker skin? There's a metaphysical component to that. We can't be 100% purely materialistic, even though I am a materialist, and I do think that all this stuff essentially happens because of like chemical reactions in the brain and that sort of thing. That doesn't mean that metaphysics don't matter at all. Sorry, I just tirade.
No, it's great. No, I wasn't laughing at you. I was just bye, Tibetan. I'm glad you were in the chat, and you brought up a lot of great points. I just really liked your parting message.
And by the way, I'm very conscious of the fact that we're like three white people sitting here talking about this right now. I don't want to focus too much on the like that metaphysical problem of like blackness versus whiteness, but like just extrapolate that out. The fact of the matter is that that's one of many metaphysical problems that we need to grapple with. That doesn't have a materialist component to it. Is the point I guess I'm trying to make.
Yeah. And
by Tim and Fim, thank you for the thought.
Yeah.
It was very.
And I think we're trying to like you guys in the chat are part of this conversation. Like we're directly talking to you, because I definitely do believe in not about us without us. If you're going to talk about a group of people, you should definitely have them in the conversation. So I don't want anyone to think that we're just up here, spouting out. We're definitely reading your comments. We're just trying to engage with you guys.
Yeah, and also like most of the thoughts I've been having lately come from a really great book which I recommend, which is Black Reconstruction by W.B. Du Bois, which talks a lot about this stuff like much more eloquently than I ever could. But yeah, so I guess to bring to the higher level thing. Go ahead.
Going back to someone to mention when you were talking about, privilege and basically whiteness is a privilege. And I think a lot of the pushback is it's hard to accept that for a lot of people when you tell them, yes, you are a benefit of privilege, and your what you have and what you're doing affects other people negatively. And there's this like reaction amongst a lot of people, probably most people, is like no, it's not. And it is true. Like there's no, I definitely believe there's no non-racist person, especially white people, and that's okay. We can work to dismantle the racism in us. We could be anti-racist, but just trying to claim that you're non-racist or you're non-privileged.
It's like I'm colorblind. I don't see color.
Yeah, exactly.
It's for
like that helps nobody. That helps nobody.
Completely horseshit. Yeah, but like, yeah, and I would also say just the way that I'm framing this nowadays is, I think that really like, well, this is getting in the weeds a little bit. I don't want to go down that road. Okay, I'm sorry. Let's go back to the.
Well,
okay,
I want to. Here's an important question. A very wrong one. Sorry, Elizabeth. Is it Dubois? And I still get it. Is it Dubois or is it Du Bois?
Du Bois specifically said that it's pronounced Du Bois. I looked this up because people asked him that all the time, apparently back in the day.
Well, now we've gotten to the end of that.
I don't want to interrupt, but I actually have to head out soon because I gotta work.
Well, you're not interrupting. We just kind of railroaded the conversation away from you.
No, it's cool.
Let's purity test you. You're going to go to work for a capitalist instead of streaming. That's lefties. Fake leftist.
Yeah. Anyway, but thanks for having me on. This was really awesome. I love talking to you guys about this stuff. And
yeah, we should do it again. I'd love to get. I mean, there's so many people we could have on this. Radical Reviewer, Thought Slime, Angie Speaks. There's a lot of people we could talk to about this.
Yeah, let's bring them on. Even Luna, because like as you said, like you were talking about how in Vietnam, like their Buddhism kind of influences the communism. I think Luna could speak to that pretty well.
Yeah, for sure. She has a lot of great information. So
yeah.
Maybe this could become some kind of like quasi-regular
thing. Because again, it's not negating more theory-based or more praxis active. Well, I shouldn't say this is praxis, but more specifically revolution-based things. This is an addition. This is you need a full balanced meal on the left.
Yeah. Absolutely. Yeah. Well, thanks so much. I don't actually know how to leave this thing. Oh, leave the studio. Okay.
All right. Okay. Well, thanks everybody for coming in. Thanks, Mexie.
Have fun. Oh, can I? Okay. Goodbye, Mexie. Thank you for joining us. But don't go yet, Redbeard. Okay.
Great. Now that she's gone.
Well, I just wanted to say a few things. Yeah, Mexie's amazing. Definitely subscribe to Mexie if you haven't already. That's a really great channel. Lots of really interesting perspective there.
I'm gonna be honest. I didn't put you guys links, you folks links in the description because collectively you guys have got like 100,000 subscribers more than me. So
no,
kind of weird. I'm gonna let you know about these little YouTubers called Non-Compete and
some people haven't heard. I'm sure there's somebody watching this right now who has no idea who I am. And you know what? You don't need to know. It's not that important. But there is a reason you should subscribe to my channel. Actually, I want to plug this really quick.
Do it.
In approximately 11 and a half hours, I'm going to be starting a marathon fundraising stream for the Trevor Project, which is a mental health and suicide prevention organization for LGBTQ plus people. So we're going to be doing, you're going to be participating a little bit, Breadbeard, as often as you can. I know you're busy, but you're also going to be there. Damn it.
I will be there.
But
I will be busy for a lot of hour tomorrow, whatever that's tonight for you guys.
Yeah.
No, we'll I will definitely be in there.
We'll get you in. But the idea is it's my birthday. All right. I'm going to admit it's kind of a vanity project because I only get a birthday every 4 years. And I wanted to do something special because I'm a leap year baby. So it's my birthday. And I'm going to do an album, basically. We're going to be cutting an album. We're going to do 9 songs How is this for a vanity project? This is pretty vain. One for each year I've had a birthday. 84, 88, 92, etc. We're going to make songs. Cunero de Izquierdas, I need you. I need your talent. We're going to be inviting leftist creators to sing, play musical instruments, all kinds of stuff. And we're going to have fun. I'm going to play that new Bernie Sanders retro video game for a little while. I want to throw that into the mix.
Wait, pause. Let's back up here. What?
There's a Bernie Sanders like retro game. You haven't heard about this?
No.
Hold on, I got to find the name of it. It's like a platformer. It's called Bernie Sanders the video game. I think there's a vintage Bernie Sanders computer game. You battle the extreme right wing. It's called Bernie Arcade.
Oh, Bernie's Arcade. Okay, I saw a Kickstarter for something. That's not what I want.
Holy shit! Apparently, this goes back to 2006. I don't know. Anyway, I just heard about this and I want to look into it. Bernie Arcade.
Oh yeah.
Is this true? The 2006 Bernie Sanders themed arcade game.
That's what I'm saying.
From Mother Jones. I am going to find it and I'm going to play it. That's one thing. There's going to be a lot of fun stuff. So we're going to have a lot of fun. I'm turning 9 years old, Radical Reviewer. Yeah, and I'm not looking forward to the big 1-0 double digits. That's not going to be fun. I'm not looking forward to that. So I'm going to enjoy being 9 for
it's
time
just
that I can.
It's all downhill once you get in the double digits.
I wouldn't know. I think around 2020 and 2040, I'll be able to. 2050, I'll be able to drive. So that'd be good.
Well, in what country?
America.
Because I've seen some pretty gnarly like 10-year-olds on motorbikes in Vietnam.
Yeah. One time I saw a cop stop a 10-year-old on a motorbike, and he just gave him a ticket and let him keep going.
I remember. By the way, Chad,
like, nothing to you can't ride a motorbike. You're only 10 years old. Here's a ticket. Be on your way. It was so funny.
Well, actually, you know what? This is kind of on topic because I found this shocking that I should not have. When I was in Thailand, I used to live in Thailand for a little under a year, and I heard this. I was on a motorcycle, and I heard from behind me this just like whoa, this like badass motorcycle coming up behind me, and I'm like hearing it getting closer. I'm like, yeah, I'm gonna see an awesome motorcycle. There's just gonna be this like cool dude on it, and it was this like it was like a Ducati. It was huge. It was awesome, and there was like this 14-year-old tiny Thai woman or girl on it, and I guess I shouldn't have been shocked because why is it a big badass motorcycle is only for a man? But this was like seriously like a sixth grader.
That's so funny. Maybe I love it. I hope she stole it. That'd be the best story if she just like freaking GTA'd it. One time, this is the opposite story actually, kind of. But did I tell you this story before? I'm sorry. I'm about to.
Yeah, that's true. You told me.
Okay. Yes, I'll tell it again. So I was. It was when I first got one of my motorbikes in America, and I felt like a big badass. So I got my big leather jacket on, and I like got a big cigar, and I was like smoking the cigar while I'm driving around my neighborhood, and I pull up, and I'm like, and I pull up next to there's these like kids kind of playing on the corner, these little boys. And so I pull up next to them and I'm just like, yeah, I got my sunglasses on. And then one of the kids looks at me and goes, hey, cool. And I was just like, yeah, these kids think I'm cool. And then the kid goes, that guy's smoking. He's smoking a cigar. And I I was like, shit, that wasn't what I wanted to. That wasn't the impression that I was like such a bad influence, I just wanted to be like, don't smoke, kid. I don't know, but
and then you pop out a lung.
And now that kid will die of cancer.
Yeah, I hope you're happy. No, well, I will say for anyone viewing or in the chat, if you're struggling like with letting go of like these concepts of masculinity and toxic masculinity and what it should be to be a man, it is so freeing when you start to let go of that stuff. And I bring that up because of with motorcycles, I used to like if my motorcycle ever broke down, or even when my car or something, like I'm a man, I gotta fix it myself. Or I would, whenever I had to take it to the shop, you know, for something even maybe small that I could do, I would always feel like this hint of shame that like they're judging me. They're like, "What kind of man are you? You can't change your own oil, or you can't, you know, whatever, put out the spark plug." And I do not give a shit now. It is so nice to not care about that kind of stuff.
Absolutely. And when I think about all the times that like my dad refused to like hire somebody to do something, like some major project that he definitely needed help with, because he's like, I'm a man, I can do this myself. And it's just like, I watched him just like struggle with things. And I'm like, I'm just going to freaking get help. I don't care. Yeah. Radical Reviewer says that I look pretty rough for 9, but I want to just say I'm about 250 in dog years. So I think I'm doing okay by your standards, Rad.
You know that a dog ages 7 years because it's common sense. There's no
that makes common sense.
Yeah. Smaller dogs tend to live longer, and larger breeds tend to live shorter. And it massively depends on like if they're active outside dogs or totally indoor dogs. That whole 7-year concept. My neighbor.
Well, I know that small dogs live like billions of years, and then those big ass dogs die so fast, right?
Yeah. Like
I had
my
a
neighbor
friend with a Great Dane, and that thing was like falling apart by the time it was 4. It was just didn't last long. That dog got so much. They had the best healthcare. That was one of my friends. She was like a freaking. She was loaded, and she spent like 30 grand on some kind of hip replacement surgery and like cancer removal. Like that dog had good healthcare, and that was at the time when I didn't have any healthcare.
I want that dog's healthcare.
I know that was a rough time. It was a dog joke. I didn't mean for it to be.
Oh, I was watching Thoughtslime stream. Thoughtslime did a great stream this morning for me. I guess last night for most of you guys.
Oh, I missed it.
Or you folks. I'm trying to. Guys to me is a gender neutral term, but I know it's not.
I know it feels that way.
I don't want to. I don't want to be exclusive.
I'm the same way.
But
say y'all.
Y'all. Yeah, there we go. Y'all, man. That is such a
gender neutral second person plural.
Y'all guys got. I'm just ruining it all.
You just have to gender it. Yeah. You have to.
Y'all need to thank the South for that.
Yeah.
You know,
y'all do.
Yeah.
You know, like in Pennsylvania, they say yins.
Yeah. Yins.
Have you ever heard that before?
Yeah, and that's I think Irish say that too. If we had
probably
we had Paul Moore in here, he could confirm that. But I think they say yins as well. But anyways,
Faith in Begorra.
Oh my god,
it's so funny to say that without an Irish accent. It's like saints preserve us. Sorry. Okay, I'm sorry. It's late. I'm getting loopy.
Quñora de Izquierdas. I wish Paul were her too. Yeah.
What were you gonna say? Were you gonna say something?
I don't know.
I feel like you were like right on the verge of saying something for the last 15 minutes or so.
Oh, what was that? I watched Thoughtslime stream. It was good. I really don't remember where I was going with it now. I remember that I was talking about Thoughtslime stream.
Yeah, Thoughtslime stream. That's what you were talking about.
Well, yeah, but I don't remember why I brought it up now. So, it was really good. You should all go watch the VOD of that. It was eyeballs only. He was just watching through a bunch of smaller lefty YouTubers videos.
That's awesome. I'm smaller than you, Thoughtslime. If you ever see this video, where's my eyeball zone? I'm technically smaller than you. I want an eyeball zone.
Get in line.
I know. I'm in the back of the line, I'm sure.
Yeah.
I love those eyeballs.
All right. Well, you're gonna turn 9 in 10 minutes here, but
nice.
I'm sure you're getting sleepy, and by that I mean I'm getting sleepy.
Right.
So
okay.
I think chat.
I'll let you go, even though it's your channel and you're supposed to let me go, but I'll let you go.
No,
I'll be magnanimous. Everyone, make sure you come make some money for Trevor. Come bring your wallet. Donate to the Trevor Project tomorrow.
Check
out now, but do it tomorrow so that so we get the credit for the non-compete fundraising drive.
How are you collecting through super chats, or is there?
We're doing Tiltify. So it'll be like a plug-in situation on the Twitch channel. This is going to be on twitch.tv/non-compete.
So it's just on Twitch.
Primarily. Well, we will be doing YouTube streams too, but I don't think we'll be doing it. I don't know. Do people get annoyed by doing YouTube 24 hours a day for days on end? I feel like they might get annoyed by that. I don't know.
Would it be any different? I don't.
Well,
Twitch.
it's just like they'll have notifications constantly. I feel like it's not something I see YouTubers do very often. I don't know. I know that people do it on Twitch all the time. I haven't seen somebody do it on YouTube. Tell me if I'm wrong, chat. I'll pay attention. But yeah. But anyway, in the meantime, I know you're tired. You're a sleepy beard.
If anyone's not already on there, I just put the link in the chat. Go follow Non-Compete on twitch.com/non-compete. Make sure you check out that stream.
Do it.
Give the birthday boy some love.
Tattoo buddies.
Oh yeah. I was explaining this to the kids the other day, so that was fun.
To the kids, what do you tell them?
I told them that
it's the Avengers. I like the Avengers.
Yeah. I told them that I'm gonna get all the alphabet for everyone, just starting at A and B.
That's a pretty good one. Good for kids.
But thank you, chat. I'm really happy to see a lot of these people in the chat. I love all of you guys, even the ones I don't know, just because you were here, and I want to form a parasocial relationship.
Il Sinistero, I think you can use PayPal with the Tiltify app, and also thank you very much for the soundproofing advice earlier. It's really been helpful.
So are you going to lead us out with some ASMR?
No, I just wanted to do a point-to-point communication to Il Sinistero.
But it was working it for me, man. I was mellowing.
I'm definitely going to let you go now.
No, I mean I was getting the ASMR. It was mellowing me out. It was chilling.
No, I know, but I mean,
well, now it's getting creepy.
If you need a little privacy.
And now I'm gonna let you. All right, thanks, folks.
On that note, thanks for watching.
Make sure to go watch EJ's stream for his birthday. All right.
You make it sound so pathetic.
For the Trevor Project.
Make sure you watch his stream for his birthday so he doesn't get sad.
We're
raising money for a good cause.
Yes.
All right, I'm leaving.
Bye, folks. Bye.